Thank you again for joining today's webinar for the Stronger Democracy Award. This is a pre-registration webinar. My name is Talia Gibbous. I am a program officer with CARET, the agency that is supporting Lever for Change, Iconic Impact, and additional ventures for this challenge. Some quick housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded, and we will post the recording on the news and updates page of our website, strongerdemocracyaward.org, later on this week. We will also email the recording to those who have registered for the Stronger Democracy Award. We have reserved the majority of our time over the next hour for your questions. So first, Lever for Change will further welcome you and provide some additional background regarding the Stronger Democracy Award. You will also hear from Sasha Post of Additional Ventures, and then also get some more information about the scoring rubric for this challenge. I will then do a very quick walkthrough of the challenge website, highlighting key information you need to know, and then we will open things up for your questions. So as questions come up, please type them into the Q&A tab, and we will answer as many as we can within our allotted time. And members of our team will also be typing responses to your questions as we are able. Before we move on, some very important dates to keep in mind. The deadline to register for the Stronger Democracy Award is coming up in a little more than 2 weeks, Tuesday, June 22nd at 5 p.m. Pacific time, and you must register in order to be eligible to submit an application. Then the deadline to submit that application is Thursday, July 22nd at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We will also be hosting a second pre-application webinar on Wednesday, July 7th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. Please save that date and note that a link to sign up for that session will be emailed to all registrants following the registration deadline. If you have any questions that we're not able to answer today or that pop up after we're done, you can always reach us at questions@strongerdemocracyaward.org. And with that, I am very pleased to virtually turn things over to Muhsin Hassan of Lever for Change.
Thank you, Talia, and welcome again to the Stronger Democracy Award pre-registration webinar. My name is Muhsin Hassan. I'm an awards director at Lever for Change. Lever for Change is an affiliate of MacArthur Foundation. Our mission is to unlock significant philanthropic capital and help bold philanthropists accelerate positive social change around the world's biggest challenges. Lever for Change manages the Stronger Democracy Award on behalf of our competition sponsors and donor partners, Additional Ventures, philanthropists Sephora and Vlado Herman, as well as others in our Iconic Impact. We are very excited to have you join today, and we look forward to reading your proposed solutions on how to strengthen American democracy. Before we continue with our agenda, we have some exciting news to share with you all. I'm very happy to inform you that we have received a new sponsor from the Iconic Impact community who will provide an additional $10 million grant to this competition. That means that there will be 3 separate awards, 2 awards worth $10 million, one from Additional Ventures, and then the other one from the new donor from the Iconic Impact community, as well as the 3rd award, which would be worth $2 million from Sephora and Vlado Herman. Before we continue with our agenda, I'd like now to introduce Sasha Post, who's the Program Director of Climate and Democracy at Additional Ventures, to give us a brief overview of the award and why and what the competition sponsors are really looking for and hoping to achieve through this award. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Sasha.
Muhsin, thanks so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Sasha Post. As Muhsin mentioned, I direct the democracy program at Additional Ventures. So this is a new program. We're still getting our sea legs under us, but we're really excited to be partnering, really grateful to be partnering with Muhsin and the Lever for Change team and the Iconic Impact team on this Stronger Democracy Award. As Muhsin mentioned, we are going to be looking in this award for applications, for ideas that are innovative, that are really pushing the envelope in terms of the ambition that they are bringing to this work. Because when we look around us and we look at the state of American democracy today, it's not always pretty, I think, as you guys all know better than we do. And so, we're looking for things that we think can really help to not only address, specific aspects of these challenges, but have the capacity to scale and have the capacity to really make a large large difference at hopefully something, approaching a national scale, at least at some point in their maturation. We are, as you know from looking at the materials, looking at the website, really open to a wide range of types of interventions that run the gamut from voting and elections, policy making, different forms of civic engagement. But I think, across all of these things, what we're really looking for are solutions and ideas that are going to have the potential to really change the structures and the underlying rules that govern our democracy, or change basic norms and practices of democracy at really fundamental levels. So again, we're humbled and excited to be able to offer some support to this prize and competition. And I think I'm just at this point going to cut this short and hand it back over to Muhsin to get into the real nitty gritty here, which I think is what people are here to hear about the scoring criteria and all of the ways that we're going to be looking at the application process and proposals. So without further ado, back over to you, Muhsin.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Thank you for that overview. As Sasha mentioned, we are looking for innovative, scalable solutions, solutions that are really, you are best placed actually to inform us about. With that in mind, I would just like to take a few more minutes here before Talia walks us through the details of the competition process, eligibility criteria, and really just focus on the scoring rubric as we kind of discuss what we consider to be a strong application and what would make your application or your solution competitive. So without further ado, let's just dive into that. Very quickly, you will see on the website that there are 4 key criteria, each with a score of 1 to 5. I really encourage you all, first of all, to please go ahead and check out the organizational readiness tool, fill that out. And once you've determined that your team is actually a good fit for this award, please go ahead and start working on your application. And as you work on your application, I highly encourage you to refer to the scoring rubric on the website so you can see what are the key criteria that we've outlined and what would make your proposal strong and competitive. So back to the scoring rubric, you'll see that the first criterion is transformative. And here we're really asking how, or does your strategy really address systemic barriers to reduce polarization, to strengthen institutions, improve processes in our democracy, and really incent participation in order to create lasting impact on our democracy beyond the funding period. So as you've probably seen from the rules, we hope that the awards here will be over 5 years. However, we recognize that this work needs to be funded and needs to continue beyond 5 years. So we're really hoping to see innovative solutions that will actually tap into whatever networks that you bring to bear, whatever networks that you have at your disposal, and continue to have impact beyond the grant period. So a strong application, you'll see if you scroll through the kind of different scores, is an application that will really articulate a powerful strategy with well-defined goals and outcomes that really actually get at those systemic barriers. And as a result, have the ability to really deliver sustainable results and create this long-term impact that we're all seeking. So that's really the first criterion. And the gist here is that, we're looking at solutions that get at these systemic barriers and not really just addressing the symptoms of what we see are kind of the problematic elements or symptoms that have, arise due to the weakening of our democracy. So that's really the first key criterion there. So if you have any questions, please type them in the box and we can have a fuller discussion around that. The second criterion you'll see is innovative. And here, we're not asking for entirely new or novel, ideas. You'll see the way we've defined innovative is really a solution that offers, yes, novel or original concepts, either though in the strategy itself or the approach. And that's really to look at how are you improving the effectiveness of existing efforts in a way that actually fundamentally strengthens democracy in the US. So, a strong solution will be one that activates original concepts in a strategy that is groundbreaking. But on top of that, a strategy that also complements and improves existing efforts. So we don't want to see, we're not expecting an innovative solution to be something, completely new that nobody's ever heard of. I mean, we want to be realistic and couched, in reality. But we are asking you to really outline how are you building upon existing efforts, how are you improving those efforts, and really, taking them to a whole other level. And that's really what we're defining as innovative. And as you scroll through the different scores there, you'll see what a score of 5 or 4 is really something that activates these original concepts, but really complements and improves existing efforts, which goes to our definition of innovative and what we consider to be an innovative strategy. The third criterion, as you'll see on the site, is feasibility, or a strategy that is feasible. And this is really where we look at the capacity of your team to implement the solution. We're also asking, do you have a track record, or the team that you've put together, does it have a track record, the capacity, as well as the relationships to succeed? Or in the case where these are not there, do you have a strategy to build that capacity? So, we encourage collaborations and partnerships. We understand that, some of these solutions will entail different teams that have maybe even not worked together before, coming together to put something really strong and competitive, and that's fine. But, under this criterion, we will be looking at what is your strategy to build the capacity in terms of relationships, for example, to actually execute and deliver results. So, you'll see that we're asking, does the approach actually reflect also an understanding of the costs, right? The implementation costs. We've asked you to budget for a $10 million solution. So we want to see, though, are these realistic costs, right? If an advocacy program, for example, is budgeting very small kind of, or small figures towards advocacy or kind of lobbying, that would not really be in line with achieving the results that you've outlined. So we ask you to just think about those things. In addition to an understanding of the implementation costs, we also want to see a good understanding of the context, and that includes risks and barriers. And how are you actually going to mitigate some of these risks? How are you building on the context in which you're operating? And we can discuss in detail later on. The context is obviously the US. We understand some solutions might be focused at the state level, others might be more federal, others might be within cities or a number of states. So whatever the context that you've outlined, given your solution, we want to see that you're bringing to kind of to work with a strong team that actually reflects a strong understanding of the context in which you're operating. As well as the team that you have and the networks that you're bringing and those relationships. So that's really what feasibility or feasible or this criterion is really looking at. So it's really around the team and the capacity of the organizations that are working together to really deliver the results. And then last but not least, the last criterion is scalable. So here we're really asking, is there evidence to demonstrate that this solution can be effectively expanded, replicated, and or adapted to other contexts, really. But the key point here is, can we do all these things while retaining effectiveness? So that's something that obviously the sponsors you're interested in. We understand that there might be some solutions that you've kind of piloted already. You have been, you've seen some great results in some contexts, and maybe this might be the time for you to kind of take it to the next level. And a $10 million grant would allow you to do that. So we would like to see some evidence that your solution can actually do this, can actually be effectively expanded. In addition to that, what about the team, right? Is the team actually prepared to position the strategy as a model solution for others? So we don't expect you to be working in all 50 states, for example, but if a solution actually has the ability or is, offers an opportunity for other communities to learn from it and replicate it and tailor it and achieve some results, that would be a very strong and competitive solution as far as you're concerned, and given the criteria that we've outlined here. So, this is a very just brief overview of the criterion, but as I said, I highly encourage you, once you've gone through the organizational readiness tool and you've determined that you are indeed eligible and you've worked, you've started working on your application, please go through the scoring rubric, refer to it, and make sure whatever solution you are devising or you're developing hits these 4 criterion, and make sure that you're really landing at that 4 to 5 scoring range and not the lower kind of scoring ranges that you have there. So as I said, happy to answer your questions after this, but at this point, I'll hand it over back to Talia from Carrot, who will offer more detail on the application itself, eligibility criteria, and other aspects of the competition process.
Thank you so much, Muhsin, and thanks again to Sasha as well. As Muhsin mentioned, your first step in determining whether or not you are a good fit for this opportunity is the organizational readiness tool. And I see we've already had a number of questions in the Q&A tab about things like what type of organization might be eligible. So you definitely want to pay attention to this piece. The organizational readiness tool is on our website. As you can see, you can access it from the main drop-down menu. And this tool will walk you through a number of questions that clarify eligibility for this challenge. So as has been mentioned, we are looking for projects that are designed to address systemic barriers and advance structural reforms in voting and elections, policymaking, and/or civic engagement to help the United States government fully and competently represent its citizens. Organizations must be within the United States, and they must either be a 501c3 or a 501c4. There's an important note here, though, which is 501c4 registrants must plan to include a 501c3 partner who can receive funds from a donor-advised fund on their application. Solutions must also be evidence-based, so that is something else to keep in mind, and the organizational readiness tool further clarifies what we mean by that. Individuals, for-profits, and government agencies are not eligible to apply, but they may participate as a partner with an eligible organization. Proposed solutions may also include lobbying as a part of their budget, but the lobbying cannot comprise more than 50% of the overall budget. So you can see going through this organizational readiness tool on your screen, there's a number of additional questions. So please, please, please take the time to go through that. If you answer yes to each of those questions, then we do encourage you to take the next step, which is to complete the registration process. As I mentioned, registration is required in order for you to be able to submit an application. It's a very simple process. If you go to the upper right-hand corner of any page on the website, you'll see this button that counts down the number of days to register. You just click on that, and you will then be instructed to create and confirm your account. A quick note here, once you have registered using your email address, we do ask that you be sure to add questions at strongerdemocracyaward.org to your contact list. This is very important to make sure that you directly receive notifications from us, including important deadline reminders and other updates. So please do that as well. So after you've created that registration account, you will see that there are some prompts to add some additional basic information about your organization. And this is just so that we can better understand our registrant community. You will not receive an email confirmation of your registration. If you are able to access the online platform, including the forums and the back end of the application, that means that you have registered successfully. And again, that deadline to register is coming up in a little over 2 weeks on June 22nd at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So just to talk a little bit more broadly about this particular challenge, the Stronger Democracy Award, as is all of our challenges, is rooted in the values of openness, transparency, and fairness. And so we really want to be sure that everyone who registers and applies for this opportunity knows exactly what is expected of them, how they're going to be scored, and who will be evaluating their solutions. And so the Stronger Democracy Award website is meant to be an instructional guide for you to understand that process. So there's a number of places to further dive in to better understand what is being looked for here. I talked about the organizational readiness tool a moment ago. Muhsin also talked through the scoring rubric. Another great resource to take a close look at is the application. So you can access the full text of the application even before you register. It's available to any visitor on the site. This includes all of the questions, the prompts, the requirements, and the word count limit. So you're able to see all of that, and that should help you assess whether or not you want to move forward. The application has a number of sections, as you can see, and so you are encouraged to read over all of them so you have a good grasp of what is required in order to submit a competitive application. So that will give you a pretty good sense of what you need to do in order to apply. The next question, of course, is how your application will be evaluated. And here I will just very quickly refer back to the scoring rubrics that Muhsin already talked about. I won't say much more than he already has, other than to reiterate that there are a number of details in this rubric that really explain what each of these traits mean in this particular context. You can toggle back and forth between the scoring ranges for any given trait, and you'll see phrases appear that further provide further detail on what a high versus a low score means for the Stronger Democracy Award. So this really defines what will make a strong proposal. And it is also the same tool that will be used throughout the evaluation process as both the peer-to-peer and evaluation panel judges review the application. So I'll explain right now what that means. And this is really getting into the nitty-gritty of what the scoring will look like after the applications are submitted. So following the application deadline on July 22nd, all eligible submissions will move into peer-to-peer review. And during this time, each lead applicant with an eligible submission will be required to score and comment on 5 applications from other organizations using the same scoring rubric that we just looked at. This is a requirement of participation. So again, if you do submit an eligible application, you will then later on need to review and score 5 other applications. What happens then is that once peer-to-peer review is complete, a subset of the top scoring applications will move on to the next phase, which is the evaluation panel. And on the website, you can see a list of the confirmed evaluation panel members. So not only will you receive scores on your application from 5 of these individuals, as well as 5 of your fellow applicant peers, but you will also get written feedback. So in addition to the numeric scores, all of the written comments that are provided to justify each score will be provided anonymously to applicants after the evaluation process is over. And we have found in the past that this feedback is one of the most important aspects of participating in our challenges. Even if you are not ultimately selected as a finalist or awarded a grant, you walk away with valuable feedback that you can then use to refine your solutions and perhaps seek out other funding or expanded support. So of course, this does raise another common question, which is, with so many people participating in peer-to-peer review and the evaluation panel, how do we ensure that the process is fair? So here I will also point on our website to a page that we have that's dedicated specifically to the normalization process. So I mentioned that each ballot application is scored by 5 fellow applicants, and then a subset is further scored by 5 members of the evaluation panel. This, of course, means that not every applicant and not every judge can look at every application. So our normalization process makes sure that you are not disadvantaged if by chance you are assigned to a reviewer who is naturally a little bit harsher and another applicant is reviewed by someone who tends to be a little bit more lenient. So we do go through a process of rescaling and normalizing all the scores, and this page on our website goes through a lot of detail about how that works. We encourage you to read over that. A few other quick features that I want to point out to you. The first is the rules page on our site, and this lays out all of the legal stipulations for teams that govern their participation. It also lays out the eligibility criteria in full, and goes into the detailed terms and conditions required of all participating teams. And then finally, we have a timeline page. And this is extremely useful as we get closer to some of these dates. It details each phase of the challenge. So as we've mentioned, the registration is required and must be completed by Tuesday, June 22nd at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Then looking a little bit further, the application deadline is Thursday, July 22nd at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Following that, we move into a period of administrative review to ensure that all of the applications are indeed met the eligibility criteria. And then peer-to-peer review takes place over a period of several weeks in late summer. So this does happen independently over this time period. All of the applicants will use our online scoring platform to evaluate and comment on their assigned applications. So please make a note of these dates as you move forward. And then you can further scroll through the timeline to see some of the other key dates that are related to this challenge. There's also a news and updates page on the site, a series of frequently asked questions. So if you have not yet done a deep dive on all of the information that is included here, we do encourage you to do so as you determine whether or not to move forward and hopefully decide to register for this opportunity. And with that, I believe it is time to move on to the Q&A portion of the webinar. So please continue to add your questions to the Q&A tab, and we will get to as many as we can in the next half hour or so. Please note that to ensure fairness, we are not able to provide guidance specific to your proposed solution. So we encourage you to take the organizational readiness tool and review the pages on the website to determine if you are a good fit. And I have seen also that we've received a number of questions in the Q&A tab, again, just asking to clarify the number of awards given the announcement that was made at the top of the webinar. So again, the website will be updated on Monday to reflect this, but the full award amount is now 22 million. 2 awards of 10 million will be made, and a third award of 2 million. So 2 10 million awards and 1 2 million award. And you will see that updated here on within a week on Monday the 14th. So with that, let's dive into your questions. My colleague Taylor Rowell is here to read your questions out loud, and we'll get to as many as we can. So Taylor.
Great. First question. We are contemplating a submission to the Strengthening Democracy competition, but had a question involving a potential partner that would be working with us. The partner organization is an independent entity, but would be considered a partisan group that works deeply on resolving election issues at the state and local level. Is there any restriction in the competition to involve what would be considered a partisan organization?
Thank you. This is a good question. So strictly speaking, there are no restrictions regarding the partisanship of partners. The restrictions that we really have pertain to the eligibility rules of the competition. So I urge you to please go and refer to that section of the website. And once you are on that section, you'll see that the requirements or restrictions are really that the lead organization applying must be either a 501c3 or a 501c4 organization. And in the case of the latter, we just ask that the team also include a 501c3 that could receive funds from a DAF. We also ask you to please note that any lobbying activities are restricted to up to 50% of the $10 million budget. So having said that, you'll notice that there are no rules really around partisanship. If you do have an organization that is partisan, that's something to consider then as you kind of think about the criterion that we just mentioned, correct? So if you think about, if you are proposing to work, in areas where, you kind of have, a mixed constituency, for example, or you need to engage a state legislature that is, of a different party. So, that would actually speak to the strength of your application. If in that case, all the partners that you have are, heavily partisan organizations, then it might limit the impact or efficiency, right? I mean, I'm not going to be a judge on the competition itself, but I can tell you, this is one thing that, a judge might look at and say, well, if all these organizations are Republican organizations, for example, how are you going to be efficient, if you're trying to deal with, other constituencies or other entities that might not be of that, particular party or what have you. So those are the questions I would urge you to ask yourselves as you think about the overall strength of your application or your solution. However, there are no restrictions around partisanship per the rules of this competition.
Great. Next question. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at a university. We do a lot of psychological research on political polarization, and we're currently designing projects on collective action and peaceful versus violent protest. I'm curious if you are funding this type of psychological research, or if you're interested in funding projects that are more at the structural institutional level.
This is another good question. So as you can see, or you've heard from this webinar, and the speakers have gone before me, what we're looking for are these innovative solutions that really are trying to address or drive structural reform to help the U.S. government really more fully and effectively represent its people. So strong solutions are those that will address these systemic barriers and help advance some of these structural reforms, with the objective of incenting the government to be more responsive to the broader electorate and really ensure that our government is staffed with high quality, high functioning institutions and people. So these are the solutions that I would say would be competitive. We also hope that the solutions that are kind of put forth do actually have evidence that the solution is a model that could be expanded, replicated. So if you think about scalability and what we just discussed, right, those are the key kind of factors that will make your application or your proposal a strong one or a competitive one. So while psychological research isn't really the primary focus of this award, if you do have robust evidence that shows a specific course of action is effective, right, and could help, for example, address one of the 3 focus areas, whether it's civic engagement as an example here, you may consider submitting an application that supports that course of action. So what I would encourage you is, whatever the approach, if it's a psychological research project, please refer to the scoring rubric and ask yourself, do you really would you score highly on each of those criteria that we just outlined and we kind of did a very brief overview on, and that should really help guide you and inform whether or not your application would be competitive.
Great. This next one's a little long, so bear with me. Section 5 of the rules notes that award funds may not be used to make a grant to an organization not involved in the implementation of the proposed solution, to make a grant to any individual for travel, study, or other similar purposes, or to make a grant to any organization except in compliance with the provisions of Section 4945G or H, as the case may be. However, Section 4945 applies to private foundations, and we are a public charity, so I'm not sure how this would be interpreted for us. Additionally, 5C notes that aggregation of philanthropic capital by organizations that re-grant to nonprofit organizations is a prohibited use of funds, whereas the FAQ specifies that funds may not be used for aggregating philanthropic capital for the purpose of re-granting to other organizations who are not partners in your application. We are hoping to understand if this is fully prohibited or just limited to re-granting to partner applicants. Can you please clarify what would be permissible in terms of re-grant or subgranting if the primary applicant is a public charity 501c3?
Thank you. This is a good question. It's a long question, but the answer is actually not that long. So in case it's not clear, what we're basically trying to say here is that re-granting or subgranting to other organizations is an eligible use of the award funds. So it is allowed to have subgrants or want to re-grant to other organizations. The only condition, though, is that these re-grants or subgrants that you're offering are for the implementation of the proposed solution that you've actually put forth in your application. So, we're simply saying your solution cannot be, give us $10 million so we can create this fund and then just start giving money to other organizations. We would like to know what is the end that these organizations are trying to achieve. So we're asking that the solution, the subgranting or the re-grants that, re-granting mechanisms that you're employing be still focused at the implementation of the solution that you've proposed and not for general activities that are really are unrelated to the project. So that's really the key kind of directive there or restriction around subgranting or re-granting. Also, we do ask that, you notice that all of the rules do apply to the subgrants. So for example, you could not use award funds to grant to an organization that would then turn around and issue an academic scholarship to individuals, right? Because we've said those would not be, that's not an eligible use of grants of the awards, of the funds from this award. So again, you can re-grant to other organizations, to partner organizations, provided that the re-granting is still trying to address the proposed, or is part of the solution that you've proposed, and not really for kind of, just unrelated or general operating activities and what have you. And also that the restrictions around funding individuals for studying or fellowships or scholarships, those restrictions would also apply in the case of re-granting to other organizations.
Great. Next question. Can evidence for the proposed solution draw upon comparative international experience, which is in the early stages of testing in the United States? Is the expectation to operate at a federal level, or state and or more locally focused initiatives welcome?
Yes, so it is perfectly fine to draw from evidence from other countries, provided you make a convincing case and explain why and how you think such an approach is actually applicable in the United States. So just tie it to the context that we're addressing, and that should be fine. The second component of the question around expectations, the answer is that no, you do not need to operate at the federal level. We understand that transformative impact doesn't really necessarily mean the size or the number of states. We understand that one can truly have transformative impact just focusing on specific states or even specific counties within states. So that's completely fine. We do not expect that folks are working at the federal level and engaging each and every partner in this space. We do ask that whatever solution you put forth, you just think about the holistic kind of nature and the key stakeholders that would need to be engaged for you to be effective in implementing that solution. So that's all we're asking for. But there is no expectation that folks are operating at the federal level, meaning state or local initiatives are more than welcome to kind of apply and would be considered competitive and strong, provided they meet those, they would score highly based on the rubric that we've outlined and provided for you on the website.
Next question. To clarify, how many grants will be awarded in total? Who is the donor and what is the amount of the third award?
So I believe Talia already answered this, but to just clarify again, there will be 3 different awards. One award will be worth $10 million coming from additional ventures. Another award, the second one, would also be $10 million coming from an anonymous donor in the iconic impact community. And then a third award of $2 million from Sipora and Vlado Herman. So there'll be 3 separate awards, 2 awards of $10 million each, and 1 award of $2 million.
Thank you. We are a C3 and are considering identifying and supporting candidates to represent communities in local elections. Could you clarify the lines and limitations between these activities, lobbying, and other activities supported by the grant?
This is a good question. So the restrictions around, lobbying, for example, are really so that we ensure that organizations are complying with IRS rules and operating in a way that does not compromise their C3 status. So, we can't offer you legal advice. What I would say here is that, you are best placed to understand as a C3 how you've navigated, lobbying and advocacy, and you're best, you know this better than I do really, on what you can do and the limitations, that surround, you as an organization or the IRS has placed really, given that you are C3. So all we're saying is we want to make sure that folks don't compromise their C3 status. So if you are planning on doing significant lobbying, we would encourage you then to partner with a 501c4 because they do have a lot more flexibility to do those activities. So, we cannot offer legal advice here, but we do urge you to go back, as folks who work on these issues and are on the ground, you know best how to navigate these questions. We don't have any restrictions from the competition's perspective or the award itself. We're just making sure, we want to make sure that we do not compromise your C3 status if you are 501c3. And in the case that you want to do more lobbying, that's where we've created the room for you to be able to partner with 501c4s and then have them do kind of the bulk of the lobbying activities. The only other restriction that we've mentioned is that whatever your approach, at least 50% of the $10 million, need to be able to be funded through a DAF, meaning the recipient has to be a C3 organization. So those activities, should be able to allow you to retain your C3 status as you continue functioning and operating. So that's really the rationale behind these restrictions.
If an organization has two unique ideas, is it possible to submit both of them with the understanding that only one might get funded?
So I would urge you here to refer to the rules of the competition, where you'll see that we actually do have a paragraph providing some direction on, in the case of organizations that would like to submit multiple applications. And the simple answer is that an organization can only submit one application as the lead applicant. So, you could serve as a partner on a different application, provided that that application is actually proposing a separate and distinct solution. So if these are two unique ideas, we would urge you then to, really focus on one idea that you think as a team and the team that you've put together offers you the best chance really to succeed and put together a competitive application. So that would be our, advice to you, that please focus on one solution. And in the case that, you still want to kind of pursue the other solution, you cannot really do that as a lead applicant. So, maybe think about another organization that you can partner with, and they could submit that as a lead applicant, and you could be on that application as a partner organization. But the short answer is that you can only submit one application as a lead applicant.
Realistically speaking, what size or scale of organizations are you expecting will be strong candidates? I work for a small organization that focuses on the state level.
This is a good question, and I would encourage you to maybe go through the Level for Change website. You can check out the Bold Solutions Network and see some of the organizations that have risen to the top of our competitions and all our competitions, and you'll notice that there isn't really a restriction around small organizations. One of our competitions that we recently just concluded, the Larson Lam Iconic Impact Award, actually awarded the $10 million award to an organization whose operating budget is around $3 million annual operating budget. And in the pool of finalists, you had large organizations with budgets of over $50 million. So this really shows that our process really looks at the strength of the solution based on the rubric. And if you look at the rubric, there's not really any reference to the size of an organization. So again, I understand the concern here. But I think we can confidently say as Level for Change that we really try to make this a level playing field and make sure that all organizations, regardless of their size, are able to participate and actually rise to the top and move on to the finalist stage.
Does registration include title of the project or other project details, or just information about the organization?
This is Talia. The registration form is quite brief. It does not include any details about the project. It's only some basic information about your organization.
How many applicants have registered so far, and how many groups are you expecting to apply?
We don't really release this information, especially at this stage. We recognize that there's still a few weeks left before the deadline. So, we do expect a robust participation based on previous competitions. But at this stage, we don't really release this type of information around numbers, but we do expect a robust participation.
Can the grant period be less than 5 years? We are likely applying with multiple groups, and so 10 million over 5 years across multiple groups would not have the impact we want.
Yes, this is a good question. So I'd like to clarify here that there is flexibility regarding the grant period, and details on the frequency as well as the size of disbursements will really be worked out with the donor team. If you are selected as a finalist and are actually selected as the awardee or award recipient, one of the 3 awards. So there's flexibility here. There is no requirement that you fill out, every year. We do expect that this would be a multi-year grant. So, if your solution, for example, makes sense to be implemented over 3 years, as long as you make a compelling case as to why 3 years, makes sense, please go ahead and do that. We don't expect you to kind of develop a very detailed budget, not at this stage especially. So if you do, move on to the next stages, and especially if you are one of the finalist organizations that will be selected after the evaluation panel, there'll be room for flexibility here, and we'll be working with you over a 3-month period to really refine your ideas and revise your proposals. So these details will be answered at that point. But to just answer the question right now, the budget is very high level and does not really need to be broken down by year. So there's flexibility here.
Should all applications budget for 10 million, and then will you have to readjust if you get the 2 million grant, or will we submit 2 different budgets?
So at this stage of the competition, all budgets that are being submitted must be submitted for $10 million. As I mentioned, or maybe we did not, but after the evaluation panel concludes in January of 2022, we will be working with the donor team to select up to 5 finalist organizations. And these up to 5 finalists again, so it could be 3 or 4 or 5, but these finalist organizations will then work with our team at Level for Change, as well as a technical partner, over a 3-month period, where we'll be revising your proposals. We'll be actually taking into account also the comments that you've received from peer-to-peer, as well as the evaluation panel. Take those into account and strengthen your proposal and refine it. So it's really at that stage that we can get into the details of multiple budgets and what have you. But at this stage, we're asking every applicant to please submit a budget of $10 million on the application that you're filling out.
I understand that the team must include a C3 to receive funds from a DAF, but a C3 cannot transfer funding to a C4. So can part of the award be distributed from an entity other than a DAF so that the part of the award can go to a C4?
Yes, actually part of the award will be distributed from other than a DAF. We expect that at least $5 million will be coming from a DAF. And that's why we asked that a C3 be part of the team. So, you're right on the money here that part of the award will be distributed from an entity that is not a DAF. So if you are a C4, don't really be concerned. We will be able to award the funding towards your team. So, that's not really a huge obstacle here. And that's why we ask that you do have a C3 as a partner organization, so we can leverage the different entities that we have in terms of, funding, and make sure that, the full proposal is able to be funded.
Thank you. Can lobbying also include a ballot measure campaign?
Yeah, again, so, our restrictions around lobbying, cannot really, are not meant to provide, legal advice here. It's fine if you can include a ballot measure campaign. If you're able to do so, if you're a C3, for example, and that does not compromise your C3 status, please, feel free to do so. If you're a C4, and you're able to do this without any repercussions, really, in terms of IRS regulations, then that's fine. We simply ask that whatever activities that are classified under lobbying also be part of, also fit in well with the overall strategy, right? So that's really what we're aiming to do here. That whatever strategies folks are proposing are strategies that are robust, are strong per the criteria that we've outlined on in the scoring rubric, and also ones that would be feasible and have the ability to be implemented successfully. So it can include an array of activities, but we leave it up to you as folks who work on these issues, or honestly best placed to kind of figure out the nuances here, to decide what types of activities you want to include as part of lobbying or outside of the lobbying activities.
This is Talia. I also just want to point out, because folks might not have seen it, there is also a lobbying policy that is referenced in the application. So if you go to the application page and do a quick search for lobbying, you'll be able to see some further details there that provides a little bit more information.
All right, next question. Can you speak more to the relationship part of feasibility? Do we need to work in a coalition with others to be feasible?
So this really depends on whatever solution you're proposing. So I would say, the direction we would offer here is, as you develop your application, as you develop your solution, we want you to ask yourself, who are the key stakeholders that would be necessary for your proposed solution to succeed? And then, ask yourself, what relationships do you have with those stakeholders? So that's really what, we're trying to drive, the point that we're trying to drive home here. There is no requirement that you work in a coalition, but we have seen that, the strongest applications from most of our prize competitions have been those that, have had a really good strategy that engages key stakeholders in whatever, focus area or avenue the approach is or solution is focused on. So that's really what we're aiming to do here by emphasizing, relationships, capacity, and stakeholders under the feasibility criteria. But it is not a requirement that folks work in coalitions.
If the lead applicant does not currently have the capacity, the organizational capacity to administer 10 million, will you accept a strategy for how to access that capacity, for example, through a fiscal agent?
Yes, that would be acceptable. And, if you look at the application, there are risks, for example, a risk and barriers section, I believe. So, this would be something to highlight there. And this would actually, in my consideration, be a strength where it shows that you're realistically looking at the risks that, your solution faces. And you've outlined a mitigating strategy here. So, this would be perfectly acceptable. Also note, as a multi-year grant, $10 million over 5 years is really not, a lot of money. So, those are points there to consider. But to answer the question, a strategy that, shows how an organization is mitigating the risk here in terms of absorption capacity for funds would be acceptable and very encouraged, actually.
Great. Can you talk about the kind of evaluation that is recommended, and is there opportunity for any research in the expenditures of the grant?
So I believe the organizational readiness tool, as well as the website, outlines the types of evaluation that we're asking. So, they range from, in rigor, really, they could be, external assessments of impact. So, if it's RCTs or quasi-experimental studies and what have you. So really, that's really at the high end of rigor, to just even, internal evaluations, depending on, where your solution is. So somebody had asked, for example, around a question around the, looking at international examples and using a solution that is really in the early stages of implementation in the US. So in such a case, you're probably not going to have an RCT or even an external evaluation, but you might have internal evaluations or outcome assessments, and that would be okay. So we're simply just asking for people to think about how to discuss their evidence and present evidence that, would really just add to the convincing, or add to, making a convincing argument as to why your solution would actually be effective and deserves funding. So that's really the expectation around evaluations. As to the question around opportunity for research, we do emphasize monitoring, evaluation, and learning. So if you are including such an opportunity, or you would like to pursue some research, for example, in terms of monitoring and evaluation, especially, that would be an acceptable use of funding. So, just outline that, please, in the solution that you're proposing. Highlight why research or whatever research you want to do is important for your solution, and how you hope to benefit from that and have that inform kind of the larger strategy. So those would be acceptable uses of the funds.
Taya, we have 4 more minutes left. Would you like to take 1 or 2 more, or?
I would say about 2 more.
Okay, perfect. So next one, is there a required format for the MOU agreements with partner organizations?
There is no required format. And I also, since we're not asking for MOUs at this stage of the competition, I really urge you to not really focus too much on that piece. But we have given some guidance on MOUs on the website. So I would urge you to refer to that guidance. But as you'll see, it's quite broad. We simply want to see a document or something that would be legally binding that outlines that you've thought about working with different partners and outlines the different responsibilities that these partners would have that would ensure the implementation of the project is successful. However, this is not a requirement at this stage. So when you do submit your application in July 22nd, I believe, we're not going to ask you to submit an MOU. So please, don't worry too much about this piece at this stage.
This is Talia. For folks who are looking for that guidance, it is also on the application page of the website. So if you go to that page and do a quick search for memorandum, you will find a link to that guidance page.
All right. May a lead organization based in the US work with international partners whose goals mirror the principles of the Stronger Democracy Award in terms of promoting democracy at a global scale?
So the focus of this competition is strengthening democracy in the US. If you have international partners who would be brought in and work on solutions that, again, are targeting strengthening democracy and these barriers that we've addressed or talked about in the United States, that would be acceptable. However, we're not really looking for solutions that would be working outside the US. The scope and focus of the competition currently is strengthening American democracy. So we hope that the solutions are going to be focused on the US.
Talia, I will pass it back to you at this point.
Thank you. Sorry, it took me a second to unmute myself. So sorry about that. So thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions, and thanks to everyone for taking the time to join us this afternoon. So if you have more questions, our email address is questions@strongerdemocracyaward.org. We will get back to you as soon as we can. If you have not already done so, please complete that organizational readiness tool. If you do find that you are a strong fit, the deadline to register is Tuesday, June 22nd at 5 p.m. Pacific time. It is a requirement in order to be eligible to submit an application. Once you register, please add questions@strongerdemocracyaward.org to your contacts. This will help ensure that you receive messages from us. A recording and a transcript of this webinar will be made available to registrants via email. It will also be posted on the news and updates page of strongerdemocracyaward.org in the coming days. Thank you again so much for joining us. We really look forward to learning more about your efforts, and I'll hand things back to Muhsin for some closing remarks.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Lever for Change, Additional Ventures, Sipora and Vlado, as well as the Iconic Impact community, I would just like to thank you again for taking your time to join us today. Please, feel free. We'll share a recording of this webinar, so please feel free to share it with your partners and colleagues. And as Talia mentioned, we will follow up with answers to other questions that we did not get to. But thank you again for your participation, and we really look forward to reading your applications once you submit them in June. Thank you again.